Everybody, stop what you're doing. Sparking Zero has finally dropped. After a long time in the making and going through game after game after game, Dragon Ball fans can finally reclaim their rightful spot for the best arena fighter with Sparking Zero. Because it's not just any arena fighter, it's the arena fighter. Back in 2007, Budokai Tenkaichi 3 was seen as the definitive Dragon Ball game for fans to play, and 17 years later, Spike Chunsoft developed what could be called the fourth installment to its series. In the beginning, I was a little nervous when I learned that Spike Chunsoft was the team developing this game, since they did make Jump Force, but my nerves would slowly wash away every time I saw bits of gameplay, which had me like... Plus, I did get the chance to play the game a little bit early since it was available at PAX West. Here's my honorary badge. With everything that's been revealed and all that I've witnessed, it was safe to say that Bandai Namco wasn't going to allow this game to be just another anime game, and rather a way for the fans to relive the childhoods from its gameplay, the roster, the what-if battles, and so much more. And you best believe I bought the Ultimate Edition as well for early access. I am so broke. So, let's talk about the gameplay. When it comes to the gameplay, a lot of what made the Budokai Tenkaichi series so fun was brought back into this game, with some minor tweaks for modern day gaming, and of course, some new mechanics to help you offensively and defensively. Whether you're a veteran or a newcomer, I'd highly recommend that you jump into the training mode to learn the controls, because it's not your typical button mashing arena fighter, for the most part. When it comes to the combat, each character is given the same input for you to create combos and use different skills and abilities that give you the edge of the battle. Keep in mind, this is a Dragon Ball game, so battles do tend to go very quickly because of how fast paced everything is whenever you're super dashing and teleporting around the arena. As for your defensive abilities, you've got a lot to choose from, whether it's from using just the guard button or even using the different counters like Perception, Super Counter, or Revenge Counter. But on top of that, you can even counter counters. Trust me, it gets very anime-like. Especially when you have moments where you and the other person are so locked in, you're vanishing behind each other, hitting counters, and deflecting ki blasts. Keep in mind, depending on what you do, certain skills, abilities, and counters cost skill points or a bar of ki. So make sure you're paying attention and don't get punished. Each character is given 2 skills that sometimes share similar effects, whether it's to help give you buffs, teleport towards your opponents, different types of evasives, and so much more. They're also given 2 abilities that give them unique attacks to deal different levels of damage, and their ultimate attack, which deals the most damage to your opponents. The way you're able to access your ultimate attacks is through entering Sparking mode when you fully charge up your ki. Entering Sparking mode essentially allows you to enhance all of your abilities and deal more damage to your opponent. Remember when I said this game isn't your typical button mashing arena fighter? Well, when you're in this state, you're allowed to chain more hits and spam the attack button for a longer period of time until you unleash your final ultimate. So whatever you do, don't let your opponent enter Sparking mode, or else you're gonna have to time your counters and pray you don't miss. Of course, the primary pull for playing this game was its gameplay. And for me, I found enjoyment in playing the game whether it was offline against the CPU or even online in ranked matches. I never had any issues with the online service and was able to find battles against people with little to no lag, and that's always a plus. Visually, every attack looked amazing and was always great whenever I was able to pull off different types of collisions or even beam struggles strong enough to sometimes break dimensions depending on the strength of certain characters. Also, picking arenas that allowed massive destruction created the right immersion when fighting, and depending on who you chose to play as, determined the type of person you are.
I know who you are, and I know what you are.
For the most part, even though the game is pretty easy to pick up, there's still some mechanics that isn't shown in the tutorial that can be discovered through fighting. And I appreciate how much fun it was to pick which character to play as from its large roster. There's 182 playable characters available in Sparking Zero's base game, which beats out BT3's roster by 20, with not only the addition of DBZ, GT, and movie characters, but also fighters from Dragon Ball Super. This is easily the largest roster in any anime fighting game, and with each one, they all had different abilities and ultimates that were unique to them. It's true that a decent amount of options were from Goku and Vegeta, but that didn't prevent me from having trouble picking who should be a part of my team. Hell, that only gave me more ways to be creative on who I chose. The game allows you to have up to 5 characters on your team, and depending on whether or not you choose to play with destruction points, you can choose whoever as long as they equate to 15 DP. Now, when it comes to the Budokai Tenkaichi games, character balance doesn't really exist, mainly because it's not really meant to be a competitive game, which I kind of enjoyed. It honestly makes sense why you'd lose to a fusion character if you chose someone like Nappa, because canonically, Nappa isn't going to do anything to Vegeta Blue, let's be honest. But in those moments, when you figure out a way to adapt and just be the better player, it feels 10 times better knowing that you were able to quote-unquote break past your limits and beat your opponent. Now, I'm not saying there should be 0 patches in this game. If a character is obviously broken, then the developer should give them some tweaks. But if you're someone who truly loves to be competitive, there's still Dragon Ball FighterZ that is literally made for that purpose. But even though I love fighters, when it comes to what a Dragon Ball game should feel like, Sparking Zero takes the cake for how it was made. I liked how each character especially had different dialogues in the beginning of the match, depending on who you pitted against each other, which gave us some hilarious interactions.
Goku Black? I swear I'll... Huh? You're not black?
The designs of everyone looked amazing, and whenever you transformed or even pulled off an ultimate attack, it really pushed the art style of the game into greater heights, making it one of the best looking Dragon Ball games up to date. But even though we have such a huge roster, we're still missing a good amount of characters from the series, as crazy as that sounds. Now, I have no doubt that there will be a lot of DLCs to come in the future with a bunch of the characters that were missing in the beginning, but it's the fact that they're not in the base game already when they really should have been included. For example, Dragon Ball is missing a huge chunk of the OG cast from the game, which is pretty sad considering most of the time the other series get a lot of love but ignore what started the series in the first place. Dragon Ball GT is missing a couple of gems as well, and I do hope we get some content from the current Super manga, but we can only dream of getting those characters included. Hell, maybe even throw in a Raleigh from Dr. Slump like they did in BT3. The options are endless. Of course, it's not a Dragon Ball game without replaying the story for the 100th time, so let's move on to the game's story. Or I guess, episode battle? Episode Battle, if you haven't already guessed, is Sparking Zero's way of sharing the story of the series, starting with the beginning of Dragon Ball Z and ending with the Turn of Power in Dragon Ball Super. Now, you'd think that would mean we'd get to play through the story with some cool cutscenes in between every match as we progress through each arc, but instead, the developers found a way to cut corners and retell the story through the lens of 8 characters. Each person has their own individual path that can be taken to progress through their episode battles, and honestly, it wasn't exactly executed all too well. When it comes to a lot of the cutscenes, the story is sometimes told in slideshows, and other times the game takes the character models and throw them into the scenes. The character models for some reason kind of look like puppets on strings whenever they're talking, but when having them in action and fighting in the game, they look a whole lot better. I did find it a little bit entertaining though, being able to switch into first person to get a little bit more immersed into the story, but for the most part, it was just to get a couple of laughs rather than taking the scene seriously. As you progress through the story, you will sometimes get the option to stray away from the actual storyline and discover some what-if scenarios that made the episode battle worthwhile, because the developers get pretty creative on certain events that happen. I will say this though, the game only has 2 difficulties, easy and normal. If you've gone through the training tutorial, then you really won't have that much of a hard time fighting these bots. However, if you want to unlock the what-if scenarios, you'll sometimes be tasked to beat your opponent in a certain amount of time, but the game can be really unforgiving when it comes to fighting the AI. One slip up can be the breaking point for whether or not you move on to the other paths. So get ready for a lot of retries. A lot of retries. And the Sparking episode cutscenes were easily when the story looked its best and allowed great visuals for us to enjoy. It was pretty disappointing that we didn't get the best story mode for this game, and some of the character episodes weren't much to go crazy over. But if you're really trying to get a Dragon Ball game that's focused on the story, your best bet is picking up Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. This was heavily carried by the fact that you can play what if scenarios, and it gets even more creative with the custom battles. In this game mode, you're given the opportunity to create your own battles, storylines, and what if scenarios all to your heart's content. That's right, if you want to create What If Goku Was HIV Positive Part 3, you can. But here's what you can do. After you've gone through the bonus battles that were created by the developers, you can take examples from how they created their scenarios and throw them into your own. For the most part, the bonus battles were okay and were mostly just a way to give you inspiration on how you want to create your levels. You can choose which characters you want to be a part of your battles, have different events be included and triggers to help create your scenarios, and set up multiple endings depending on the conditions you have set for the players to meet. This will definitely help keep the game alive by giving the fans the opportunity to become the author of their own story and have it be shared to the public. It's just really fun being able to play a really cool and thought out level and then play a really goofy level all in one sitting. But it wasn't entirely perfect on the customization side. When creating things like the title or even the dialogue, you're given set phrases and you choose from the list that the developers have given you. But that's not what the issue was. God knows how bad things would turn out if you were given full control on writing whatever. My problem when creating these battles were finding said phrases because there currently isn't a proper way to find what you're looking for, even with the filter option. For some reason, things weren't in alphabetical order and you can't type what you're looking for, so it really becomes tedious when in the process of creating things. Also, with the dialogue, because there's no voice line given to the characters, you can sometimes miss out on important details that were created. Whether it's to create ways to build up the moment or keywords for you to win the battle, it's very easy not to notice the cues while you're beating your opponent's ass. Hopefully things change in the future, but for someone like me, I'd much rather spend time playing what other people made rather than creating my own storyboards. This game also has a tournament mode with different types of tournaments for you to partake in. Whether it's playing online or offline, nothing beats the nostalgic feeling of entering the tournament and hearing the announcer hyping me up while I'm preparing for battle. Some of my favorite modes were the World Tournament, Cell games, and the Yamcha games. And being able to choose some of my favorite characters in certain game modes made it so much better as well. There really wasn't any issues I had for it, and honestly I could see myself playing this constantly like I was a kid again. You can even create your own tournament with your own set of rules in order to make it fun however you see fit. Whether it's choosing the maps, deciding if it's team based or single matches, or even allowing flying. Have fun creating your dream scenario. But of course, we also gotta talk about the other features this game had to offer. Almost anything that you do in this game will end up as a reward in some sort of fashion whenever you complete a battle. Whether it's by visiting Zeno to complete his long list of missions, or going to the shop to buy certain items, or even simply using the Dragon Balls to summon Shenron for wishes. You have a lot of ways to earn Zenny, XP, new characters, customization options, and many more things. It was very easy getting a hold of whatever you needed in this game because all you're ever doing is simply fighting. So in turn, you get rewarded just for playing. When you enter a shop, like I said, you can buy certain items, and with some of them, they can actually help benefit you in battle. You have things called ability items that you attach to your characters that allow you to give them different buffs, so you can gain some advantages in the game. Depending on the level, determines how powerful and beneficial it can be for said character. You can also buy characters to add to your roster, different clothing for them to wear, additional voice lines, and even background music as well for you to jam out while fighting. There's even...
You won't see one of these every day.
There's...
A big spender, huh? Wish my husband would take me shopping a little more often.
Bulma, shut up. Damn! There's even a way for you to customize your player cards with different options given to you in the shop. But let's go back to the character customization part real quick. I'm glad that we're given the option to customize our character's clothes and have the chance to even add accessories to them that can sometimes change their skill set. However, and I hope this changes with future DLC, there isn't nearly enough clothing for a lot of the characters, and I'm shocked that a lot of the obvious options weren't included in the base game. Again, I would have loved to see what types of options people could come up with, but we were limited. Hell, maybe even changing the colorways of characters that don't have other types of clothing could really make things interesting as well. All I can really do is hope in the future we see more options. Who am I kidding? Of course we'll be getting DLC for clothing. Anime fans will buy anything nowadays. Me included. I bought the additional music for crying out loud. There's also the game's encyclopedia that allows you to learn a little bit of the history of the characters through the voices of Chi-Chi, Bulma, and Videl, sharing their opinions and experiences while on a Discord call. It was funny seeing the reactions to some characters and loved the format the game made it in, almost like it was a podcast. On top of that, Sparking Zero has a 2-player game mode that was obviously not meant to be in this game, but with enough fans that complained, you can finally relive beating your friend's ass on the couch while mimicking canon events that happened in the series. I was a little disappointed that you could only play in the hyperbolic time chamber when you're in that game mode, but the game most likely wouldn't be able to handle 2 people destroying the city at the same time, so they had to limit the destruction into one big open space. But I also realized that we're missing a lot of maps as well. As for the main menu, it was full of smooth animations that transitioned very seamlessly whenever I would check different categories and change columns. Even seeing how some of the characters interacted with each other in the background was fun to watch. Again, it's little details like this that show how much the developers cared for this game. So, here's my final thoughts. Whether or not you're a Dragon Ball fan, I feel like this is a game that can really get you into the genre of arena fighters because of how beautiful the cinematic ultimate attacks looked, alongside the many different types of transformations, and of course the gameplay itself. Without a doubt, Sparking Zero was able to achieve its one goal to satisfy me, and that was by really focusing on making the game that we really deserved, a true addition to the Budokai Tenkaichi series. Sure, it's not a perfect game, and it definitely had its flaws with its quote-unquote story mode, but as a kid, there was nothing more I wanted to do than have being struggles and create dream scenarios with whatever Dragon Ball characters I chose. Do I wish there were more options available for us to clothe our characters? Yeah. Do I wish there were more maps available for us to play on? Of course. There's a lot of things that I wish was available in the base game, but I just have to hope that they'll eventually be available in the future of this game because I can already tell that this is going to be around for a long time. I think as a game itself, it has some things that can easily be improved on, but for a Dragon Ball game, this is definitely a top tier because of how fun and engaging the gameplay was for me, and I want to see more anime games take this approach when it comes to developing. Don't give us an obvious cash grab, and instead, give us a game that was clearly made with love from the developers. So yes, I'd recommend that you buy Dragon Ball Sparking Zero because in my opinion, this is the best Dragon Ball game up to date. And with the content that will come out in the future, it will only get better for the fan base. And if you've already bought Sparking Zero, please let me know what your thoughts on the game are. And also, who do you main? Leave a comment down below. With that being said, if you made it this far into the video, don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. All your support means a lot to me. And like always, I'll catch y'all on the next one. Take care, everybody.